welcome to the Earth Feels podcast.
I'm Rose.
And I'm Christine.
Welcome to Earth Feels, the podcast for people feeling overwhelmed by the endlessly gloomy climate news.
Where every week we have soul-based conversations about climate change and explore the idea that climate change may be happening for us as much as it is happening to us.
If you are ready to shift your focus and secure the future for our kids and our grandkids, then this is the podcast for you.
And yes, we do know how to spell. So, welcome to the Earth Feels podcast, Sandra Boatman, over in the UK. So, hello, Sandra.
Hello, Christine. Thank you very much for inviting me on. Very pleased to be here.
And I am so excited for you to be here and for us to have a conversation about climate change as a spiritual or energetic issue, and why we both agree that it goes beyond just the pollution that we're putting into the air, which is obviously causing a huge problem, right? I mean, just we're recording this at the end of August, the summer 2021, and we've had wildfires over here in North America. There's been floods in London and in
Belgium and Germany.
That's right, Germany, that terrible flooding in Germany that killed dozens of people, and those wildfires in Greece and Turkey. And that's just a sampling of the last couple of months, right?
That's right.
And right now you are experiencing a lot of rain.
Yes, we've had a lot of rain and we've had a very unusual August. Our temperatures are lower than normal, which is very pleasant actually, but it's just not normal at the moment. So something's going on that we need to deal with, which is where we come in on this.
Exactly. And so the climate scientists have been telling the general population and politicians for a long time that it is our burning of fossil fuels that's causing this destabilization of the weather and sort of what we might call climate chaos that we're heading into. It's not really a cliff that you go over, it's more a slope that we're sliding down, and we're just getting further and further down that. But why would you say you think climate change is more than just that?
Well, I think climate change and all of the problems in the world are energetically based, because we are all energy, whether you realize it or not. We are very limited in our perception of who we are because we base our reality on just 5 senses. But we've only got to look around at other animals and birds to know that they can sense far more than we can. And we don't actually see electricity or gamma radiation, but we can see the results of it and feel the results of it in our lives. So it's really important to understand that just because we can't see something, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And from that basis, we can influence greatly what's happening. There is a book that I am absolutely ecstatic about called Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins. It's a really important work that raises the question of each of us having a level of consciousness, which goes right up into the thousands and also goes right down into the low 20s. And all of the levels of consciousness we are able to experience, they're all within us, but we get stuck at certain lower levels, and these keep us stuck. And we can't do anything until we get ourselves out of that particular level. I'm able to measure the levels of consciousness as he was able to. And it seems that the world at the moment is operating from a very low level of consciousness, basically in fear.
Okay. So I'm just going to stop you there for a minute.
Yes.
So you're talking about Power versus Force, which is Dr. David Hawkins. He was a psychiatrist, right? An American psychiatrist, I believe.
He was, yes.
He's passed, since he's not still.
He has indeed, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And he talked about this map of consciousness, which if you Google David Hawkins' map of consciousness, people can probably even see it, right? I'm pretty sure it's,
Absolutely.
it's out on the internet. So you're saying that the lower vibrations are, the lowest scale. Obviously, you say it goes up into the thousands, but most of us, I would say most of us on planet Earth, they're not anywhere near 1000 or over. But do you want to talk a bit just why he's entitled his book Power versus Force, and then we will talk about the vibrations of the world in general.
Absolutely. Yes. He says that below 200, which is a level of courage, the energy that is used is force, because everything below 200, we're in survival mode. And we
Okay.
actually don't have access to our own power for the good of others. But above 200, then we get into power, which is the good use of energy. And this is why it's so important that we do not dwell down at the lower hundreds or below that, because there is something called an attractor field at each level. And it's as if we've been plugged into that attractor field with thoughts, beliefs, and emotions, and we can't get out of that. We're stuck feeding off that attractor field, and we don't know it.
Sort of when you talk about an attractor field, that I think of a magnet that
Mm-hmm.
kind of pulls all of the things that resonate with it, the iron filings, close to it. So is that kind of what you mean when you're talking about an attractor field at a certain
Yes,
level?
I like to liken it to sewage. Actually, if you're down a
Oh,
sewer, yes,
we're going there, are we,
yeah,
Sandra?
we're going down into the sewers. So if you happen to be in the sewers, you actually don't have access to anything but sewage. But if you go into a clear water spring in a mountain, you don't have access to sewage there. You have clear, pure water. And we're plugged in wherever we are to the source of that level. And it's very difficult to see anything beyond the end of our noses. We get stuck at that level until we take steps. And the great thing about it is our journey as human beings is to raise our levels of consciousness, and we can have them we can be quite balanced in an overall sense, but we can be very low in one situation or one relationship or one feeling about ourselves, which is like having a square wheel on a car, which makes a very bumpy ride. But we don't realize this. We don't realize that we can do something about it. And simply by raising our level of consciousness and having understanding and awareness, we can do something about it. And this applies to our planet at the moment, because we often feel hopeless about climate change. It's not hopeless. We can do something. We are very powerful beings. We just don't know it.
Okay, so we're going to talk more about changing our level of vibration or consciousness
Mm-hmm.
a little further on. But you were starting to talk about the overall consciousness, or what do you prefer, consciousness or vibration level? What does
I
Dr.
think, well, Dr. Hawkins says consciousness, it's levels of consciousness. And I think that that is a good one, because we know that a level of consciousness is something that we experience, like poverty consciousness. When we're feeling very poor in mainly financial situations, but actually we can be poor in health, and we can be poor in resources and help and friends and everything else. So we understand a poverty consciousness. So if I say that, it's a very low vibration, and it means that you won't take advantage. You won't even see the opportunities of taking advantage of any help. You just get stuck. So it's like climbing a ladder, really.
Right. And it's just like when you're surrounded by sewage, everything smells like sewage. And you
Absolutely.
can't imagine that there's clear water around. So I realized we were so excited about jumping into this topic that we didn't talk about your background and how it is that you can talk about Dr. Hawkins' work and energetic levels. So why don't you share with our listeners, Sandra? You have, I know, you can't, listeners, you can't see what Sandra just did, but she made a face because, and I know why, because she's got so much training and it's going to be hard to describe it all. But I will say a little bit about her background, because I've known Sandra since 2017 when we met in Boston at a Margaret Lynch tapping workshop.
I know that she was originally trained as a nurse, and but for several decades, she's run her own ballroom dancing school in Norwich.
Is that where you are?
Norwich, yes. London
Yeah.
and Norwich.
I'm trying to get the British pronunciation correct. I said garage band before we got online, and Sandra corrected me. Apparently over across the pond they say, what do you say? Garage?
Garage.
That's wrong. I think most of the listeners will agree with me, but anyways. We digress. But you have a lot of energetic training.
I
So
do.
why don't you share just a little bit about what your passions are, what your interests are around energy?
Everything energetic, really, because I started back in 1996 studying anything I could get my hands on to do with energy techniques. I first learnt massage and aromatherapy, but then I became a reflexologist, and then I got into crystal healing. The work with energy techniques is amazing. And as I got more and more into it, and then I started on neuroscience as well, learning all I could, became a hypnotherapist and NLP trained, and EFT, that's tapping, trained as well. But my sensitivity to energy has got stronger and stronger as I work with it, which is why it's so imperative that I think people realize how powerful they are. It's innate, it's in everybody. We just don't tap into it. And this is an opportunity for us all to go, do you know what? There's a little bit of a problem out there. We may feel too small and too hopeless to be able to do something individually. I certainly can't do very much other than my recycling and only having a shower a week, and I smell. No, it's not really. I don't have one shower a week. I'm sorry, everybody. But I can't do very much more than that. But it can make you feel hopeless. It can make you give up, and it can actually make you go and do something in a sort of, I might as well go and have another coffee in a non-disposable cup, because it really doesn't matter what I do.
So
And
you
it's that
to the hopelessness and
and the
and I
despair.
think,
Yeah.
and I think everybody who's listening to this who cares about climate change knows exactly what you're talking about. And I would argue even those who aren't as aware of what's going on with the climate crisis are aware of it at a subconscious level. It's affecting all of us.
Absolutely, because it's all over the media and it's all bad news. We never hear the good news about things. And there are countries, governments, and businesses that we blame. The trouble is, blame takes our level of consciousness down. We have to draw a line in the sand and go, right, this is all about feeling empowered and being able to do something. While we sit there and blame and say, well, someone else should clear it up, and it's going to be this huge great country over there who has no plans to stop using coal for the foreseeable future, by then it's going to be too late, tralala, all of that negativity and the apathy that comes with it. Yes, so far businesses have been short-sighted and they have been profiteering, but we have to do something now, and it's up to us.
So I love that this work that you're talking about, and you're going to talk a bit more about, is empowering.
Absolutely. And this is so important to me, that people realize their own power and they can change their lives for the better. This work is personal. Can I just explain the concept of it?
Yes.
The concept is that like a sea, a rising sea, unfortunately, I shouldn't use that analogy, but it raises all boats. And it takes very few people doing this sort of work to have a ripple effect out, to help other people to raise their consciousness level as well. And that's why I say it's a ripple effect, and we are the ripple effect. Because if you go into a room in a really bad mood, and then you actually took care of that and thought, well, what kind of effect am I having on this room full of people? Or you just watch someone else come into a room who's in a bad mood and see how the atmosphere changes. You realize that the energy we put out in our emotions, in our attitude, in our tone of voice, in our behavior matters. Our energy matters. And then we realize that if we have a better level of consciousness, if we go up and look after our own energy, we see the changes because we no longer impact others negatively. That changes because their day improves and they go out and that improves. And yes, you may not see the results in your lifetime. I may not see the results of this in my lifetime, but I also say if we're going to sit and do nothing, then shame on us, really. We have the choice to do something, and I think we can do something. We can make our own lives better. So this is all going to be based on your personal level of consciousness, knowing it affects other people, knowing further down the line it actually affects the whole planet.
Right. And I think that's important to emphasize, because there might be listeners out there who are going, well, she's saying, well, it's going to improve our lives, but we need to do more than that right now, because it's in some way, maybe it's just energetic recycling, or, a way for us to feel good ourselves. But meanwhile, the planet is going all to heck. And what you're saying, what I understand you're saying, because I do energy work as well, and we sometimes do energy work together, is that by changing our vibration, by making a conscious choice to work on our consciousness, I like vibration, but I'll use our consciousness level to raise it to where it's at the point where it's into the power versus force. And I'd like to kind of emphasize that Hawkins uses force as sort of a not very adequate way of making change. And that's kind of what is the norm in our culture. We are all, our culture in general, correct me if I'm wrong, Sandra, is at a vibration level lower than 200. And we want,
way below, yes.
Yes. And we want to raise our own vibration, our own consciousness level to 200 or above, because then we're into where real power, we're talking about real power, as opposed to change coming from forcing somebody. If you're a parent out there, that it's much easier to inspire change in your children, not by forcing them to, clean up the dishes or whatever, but by inspiring them. And that's kind of just a very small little example of the difference between power and force. I don't know if you want to say anything more about that.
I totally agree with you. I must also add, as I didn't before, that this all comes with intention. Intention is so important in energetic work, because that was my cat walking on my papers.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I thought, don't tread on it.
What consciousness level is your cat at?
Is my cat. She's not very well. She wanted to sit on my papers and rattle. Hello, Sheba. Yes.
All right. You were talking about power.
Oh, intention. I was saying, yes. I'll blurb on about that. Yes, so it's important that what I didn't add before is that we have all of this work with intention, because where we put an intention out and we put it out to raise the planetary level of consciousness to a place where people care. They care about the other, because at the moment, as I think I said earlier, the level of consciousness, when it's very low, we're in survival mode. We only care about our own immediate problems, and we couldn't care less about next door, or garbage, or the planet, or animals, or wildfires. If it doesn't concern us, we think, oh, that's okay, and we don't care about the future. What we need to do is to raise the level of consciousness so that we can see further. It's another analogy is like it's going up in a lift. At ground floor, you can't see out. When you get to the top floor, to the penthouse suite, you can see everything, and we need to raise that level. And that is
right now. Right now you'd say we're kind of a little bit higher than ground floor, but not much. Like in general,
well, there's an awful lot of people who are in the basement, to be honest with you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's that low, that the apathy and the selfishness and the greed and the shame, which I believe is totally hidden. People don't realize how ashamed they are. Certainly our generation, we've been warned for years about this. Have we done enough? I don't know. But is it down to the
Well,
individual? It's
based on
governments.
the evidence, we'd say no.
We'd
We've
say
not
no.
done
Yes.
enough. Okay, so we're going to wrap up this conversation in a little bit, but I think we're going to have you back on, Sandra, because I love this work, and this is a really important conversation to have, because people look around them and they go, nobody else is changing, and this problem is too big. It is a global problem. It is big. So give us a couple of simple steps that we can start with, and then if you can, share with your listeners what you're going to be offering in the next couple of months to help people raise their consciousness.
Okay, I think the biggest thing that people can take away from today is the fact that we can do something. We can make a choice. And if everybody had the ability to measure their own consciousness level, they could see where changes could be made. They could be made in relationships, in finances. It's the way they think about things. It's their belief systems. And that's quite important to realize, that just by thinking about things, by putting a different pair of glasses on and looking at the opposite view of what you're actually thinking, to know that there is another way of looking at it, which will have the effect of raising your level of consciousness, your vibration. That's something that we can choose to do if we think it's possible. In the lower levels of vibration, we don't think possibility is a chance. There's no potential for it. So we have to sort of go into a very open mind and curious way of going, wouldn't it be wonderful if this was possible? If it was a possibility. That's the first thing people can do, is become curious about the possibility of finding their own innate power and using it for the benefit of everybody else, while improving their own life.
Okay. Yes, that's the little bonus. So becoming curious, I wonder if you would recommend them reading Power versus Force.
They could well do if they want to, or just look at the chart, to be honest, to see.
Yes.
It's quite involved, the book. It's incredibly fascinating. I think it's a seminal work. But I just think if you look at the chart to see how you can go up, changing levels is not necessarily something that you can just go, I feel like going up to courage today.
No.
But just small incremental steps would be really good, which is what I'm to offer when I do my meetings. So
so we will put a link to a chart, online chart of the Hawkins map of consciousness. And tell folks what you're going to be offering.
Well, I'm going to be offering a weekly meeting on Zoom, so that people can come together, and I will be offering a raising of level of consciousness, and at the same time a visualization to help to clear the planet of the climate change, which I ask people to do weekly in their own time, and each week will have a different theme, because we have to look at the elements that are involved, and the most important element is air, because air is the wind, air fires up the fires, and air causes the seas, hurricanes and everything else. And we have to look at the air pollution, and there are methods of clearing.
And so these are weekly Zoom meetings, and when you're going to be starting them, or is there a link that they can go to, a Facebook group, or what?
Yes, I have 2 Facebook groups. One of them is called the Ripple Effect, and that's free to join. It's a public group, and I'll be putting information in that will help everybody to understand the concepts of this. And then there's a private group they can join, where there'll be details of each meeting. Everything is free. Everything is this is my contribution, because I can't do much else because of the limited things you can do when you're doing as much as you can. Other people may feel inspired, and this is the other thing it can do, to make a different contribution. They may contribute to something that I contribute to, which is 1 trillion trees by the World Wildlife Fund, or go and write to their MP, or target different companies or something like that, or start a a rubbish collection thing. Other people may feel inspired to do something practical, financial, or whatever, but this we can all do alongside everything else you do.
Okay, so
even
those
if
are
you don't
weekly.
believe it.
Okay, so we'll post a link to those 2 Facebook groups, and as well as to the Map of Consciousness map. And as it turns out, Sandra and I will be doing some collaboration as well, because I'm also launching a climate cafe conversation, which at this point is going to be once a month. The first one is going to be on Saturday, September 4th at 8:30 Central, which is 9:30 Eastern. I apologize to all the folks on the West Coast, because that is 6:30 Pacific, and over in the UK, that is 2:30 in the afternoon on Saturday, September 4th. And the climate cafes that I'm going to be holding, I am offering this as an opportunity for people to get together with other people who are concerned about climate change, and we're just going to talk, not just talk. We're going to talk about our emotions, which we may not have many other venues where other people are like-minded, and we're just going to share in a very non-judgmental space what we're going through emotionally. This is not about the science. This is not about, is climate change happening? It's just to tune in. Again, it's a free call, and I'll put the Zoom link on the episode page as well. The invitation is for people to get together and get some support. And I will also be offering some energetic tools for us to help process that emotion, because just even acknowledging the emotion and processing it can raise your level of consciousness around it. All right, so that is a lot of information, and like I said, we will have Sandra back. I'm so glad that you came on and shared this really important piece of the puzzle with our listeners. And we usually talk about some good news, and we also have action tips, but there's been just woven into our conversation a whole bunch of action tips, but I'll list them on the episode page as well. And if there's good news, I would say actually the good news is that this isn't just a carbon dioxide pollution problem. This is an energetic problem that can be addressed at the level of consciousness. And I think that's good news. What do you think, Sandra?
I think that's absolutely right. And I think the time is now to go, yep, that's possible. And I'm in on that one. And I think there are a lot of people on the planet doing a lot of energetic work. And the more that do it, the better it will be. But the few can help the many. They found that by people praying and bringing the crime rate down in certain cities when people pray together. This is going to be energy work for humanity, and there's nothing better than having compassion and helping the world, in my opinion.
Yes. And feeling compassion for ourselves. So Thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for listening, folks, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you for having me.
That's this week's Friday episode of Earth Feels. Special thanks to singer-songwriter Kristen Hoffman for generously allowing us to use Song for the Ocean. Thanks for listening.
Don't forget, subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss an episode. Catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Children of the earth, I'm calling out. There's a mission for you and for me.